dog days of August are here, and the dogs were out versus the Lions this morning. It's Evan and Tiki on the fan. Sean Morris, Tiki Barber, as Evan enjoys vacation. A big Monday to you, Tiki. Hello.
I mean, dogs, you mean you and Loogie?
Oh, we were dogs.
Over at Giants camp? That's what you're talking about?
We were dogs.
Going to watch the fighting that was taking place, the skirmishes that always happen with joint practices. Always. Because it's the first time you're playing somebody who is not your teammate. And it's not about hurting those guys. I don't think it's anybody wants to get hurt. It's just different. It feels so nice to hit somebody who's not your guy.
Yeah.
Who you don't have to pull up on, who you don't have to worry about injuring going forward. Again, they're not trying to injure anybody, but it is so nice to play against somebody else.
Yeah, I was really excited to get over to the Giant facility today, knowing it was a joint practice versus a team that a lot of people have already written into the Super Bowl. I mean, let's face it, the Detroit Lions, the runners-up in the NFC a year ago, a team with a lot of fanfare, a lot of people picking them this year to go do special things. Your boy Dan Campbell coaching them. So, got to Loogie's apartment 7:30 this morning. Bushy tail. Loogie walked out. First time I think he's seen that hour after sleeping in a long time. And we headed off to Giant practice, and it's been the story of the morning now, Tiki. First of all, before we get into the expectations and how they match up, you're right. The skirmishes all over the place, which I'd kind of forgotten about driving to practice today. I'd forgotten that teams get into these kind of fights. And the first one happened nearly right in front of us. It was Drew Phillips mixing it up with Amon-Ra St. Brown. But that second one happens after Daniel Jones has a pass broken up. Then he's getting in the middle of it. He's getting tugged out of there. Giants show a little fight. Now, I don't know if I want Daniel Jones in the middle of it, but that was really cool to see.
I was surprised at the quarterback that Daniel Jones got into the middle of it. But I can see why he did it. So there's a code between offensive linemen and your quarterback. It should always be this way. I don't care if you like your quarterback or you don't. Well, if you don't, you actually see this not happening. Offensive linemen always defend the quarterback. If he gets hit late, if he gets pushed, if anything untoward happens to your quarterback, it is the offensive lineman's responsibility to go defend his honor, so to speak, even though that's not what we're talking about. You know what I mean? You go defend the quarterback. So to see Daniel Jones when Greg Van Roten is getting worked over by one of these defensive tackles. Daniel Jones, he comes in there, like, aggressively.
Yeah.
He didn't just, like, push him off. He came in and hemmed him up a little bit. And then that's what started the skirmish.
Yeah.
Right? It probably would have just been D-tackled center, because I think Roten was playing center at that point.
He was. He played center most of the practice.
Center. It would have been a little skirmish, and then it would have stopped. But as soon as Daniel Jones goes flying in there, that's when it became a melee. That's when everybody jumped in, and then you see the quarterback coach pulling him out of there.
Shea Tierney.
Shea Tierney, like, dude, what are you doing?
Pulling him out. And it was so noticeable in the red shirt. And then, obviously, there's another one at the end of practice with the Giants' defense on the field where Joe Shane is dragging guys out of.
Right.
And, look, fights are fights. It's training camp. That stuff's cool to see. It's entertaining and everything. But the bottom line is this. Loogie could tell you this. And Tiki, you've gotten a feel around it. There is so much uncertainty around the Giants as we start this 2024 campaign. And as we get ready to start this week with the preseason. And I think the uncertainty tends to slant you negatively, and I understand why, right? 6 wins, the team basically telegraphed on a television show for everybody to see that they did think about upgrading a quarterback.
Yep. There
are major questions still. Can the offensive line come together? But players being injured, a lot of uncertainty in the secondary, which I think is probably the Giants' biggest weakness for what I saw today. But ultimately, this is why you do these joint practices, right? You're tired of practicing up against each other. Starters play less and less in the preseason. How do you match up versus another NFL team at this point in time? When we showed up at the facility today, there was, I'm not going to lie, from the reporters and everybody, a negative, wait till you see what happens with this team versus the Lions. There was a negative aura to what they had seen in camp. There were noticeable players, but overall as a team. And we walked away today, and it feels like every reporter is saying it from here to King, any fan that was in the stands today. The Giants flat out, Tiki, look like they belonged versus the Detroit Lions. And now the question is that a one-day thing, or should we up our expectations for this team?
And that's the hard thing, because this doesn't mean anything. We can talk about how much fight the Giants have and how exciting it is to see the skirmishes and Daniel Jones being a part of this. But the reality is, until you win, until you do it consistently, then you're not going to be taken seriously. And the perfect example is the team that they're scrimmaging against. So the Detroit Lions 4 years ago, hired Dan Campbell. And look, they're better, right? They have that fight in them. You can see it. You can see how he talks. You can see how his team responds to him. But they don't go out and set the world on fire. But what they did do was set a culture and set a precedent that as they started to get more and more talent on this team, it culminated in what we saw last year, which is they're a game away from getting to the Super Bowl. And a tight game, obviously, last year in the NFC Championship game. So you know that once the talent gets there, if the culture and the fight is right, then the team has a chance. And so right now, I can't predict what the Giants are going to look like once the season starts. They have some injury issues on the offensive line, even as it is right now.
Yeah.
Evan Neal, who knows if he's ever going to come back, and if he does come back, is he going to play tackle or is he going to stay is he going to go to guard? And what's Luminor? Like, there's so many moving parts with this team.
John Michael Schmitz has been out the last week and a half.
Exactly right. That's why.
Which is why Van Ruten's been at center. Right.
Center. So it doesn't feel like, oh, we got this put together, team right now. But what you have is what I talked about last season with the Giants. They fight, right? They had no business being in some of the games that they were in at the end of the year last year. They just didn't have the talent out there. Their quarterback's hurt. Saquon was banged up at some points of the season. Your wide receiving core is nowhere near what it is now. The offensive line is a group of rotating inferior pieces. Yet they were in games.
Yep.
Right? They had this fight about them, and so. The only thing I take away from today from the Giants is that fight is part of their culture.
Okay.
And it's what we saw with the Lions 3 years ago, and it's where you can hope, as long as you keep this thing together and don't get so anxious about firing a coach because of disappointing whatever, you know that the system is right. Like, the program is right. The people are starting to get right, and eventually you'll see success. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I love the fight that this team has.
There's no doubt about it, and we'll take your calls again, 888-808-1019. Expectations on the Giants year here after that joint practice with the Lions. Look, they're a good coach team. We can say all we want, and we can manufacture this story that Brian Dable is somehow in a hot seat. He's not. He was the coach of the year 2 years ago. They won 6 games with 3 different quarterbacks last year. We're in so many other ones. And as long as you're a really well-coached team and you show all the guts and everything you pointed out, in the NFL, everybody lives somewhere between 6 to 9 wins, sometimes 10 wins. The Giants should live there.
Right.
But what the Giants have going for them now, which I just saw with my own 2 eyes, Tommy saw, and obviously, Tiki, you've been by the facility. The word dogs we joke about, it's the truth. Malik Neighbors is different, as the kids say. And I'm not trying to do the overhyping, overdoing anything. We talked to a couple people there that have been there for the Odell camp, the Saquon camp. This is another stratosphere than that. And you saw him. He went 8 for 8 on attempts, targets, catches versus a Lions secondary that's been upgraded. This man is unguardable, Tiki. And
I mean, we saw it all.
We saw it all
camp so far.
And it's not like a hidden thing. I mean, he was drafted 5th overall, and people thought he was the best player. But this is a different kind of player that could take a team that would win 6 games. You could add on, let's say, 2 more wins just from the style of play that he brings you and targeting that. And then on the flip side, I haven't even mentioned Brian Burns, who was baking Penei Sewell all practice long. He just looks different. He's lean. He's different. The Giants are taking all that gut and all that grit, and they have a long way to go talent-wise. But they have more talent as far as, big-time presence players than they did a year ago.
Yeah, I like the cockiness that I'm starting to see. And it's not even like a loud cockiness. It's just a quiet, I'm really damn good.
Yeah.
You feel that about some of these players. And it's hard to develop that unless you come in with a ton of hype, like I think Brian Burns is coming in here, like Malik Neighbors is coming in here. I remember when I was a rookie, I didn't have that. I was kind of like, dude, do I even belong here? Right? What's my role going to be?
You were one of the short guys that we saw on the field that nobody knew you belonged.
Right, it's like, all right, I'm going to return kicks. I know that, but what else am I going to do on it? I didn't have that.
Right.
But as I went on in my career, I developed it.
Right.
Once I was in year 5 and 6, it was weird. I'd come to camp and I just know I was good.
Right.
I feel like the Giants have a handful of players that absolutely know they're good. And that's comforting as a fan because at some point that guy's going to show up. Malik Neighbors is going to show up. Brian Burns is going to show up. Kayvon's going to show up. Like, these guys are going to make like spectacular eye-opening plays. And again, this doesn't guarantee that they're winning 10 games, but it just tells you that it feels different. Right?
Yes.
The Giants feel different. than they have in previous years. There's still some of those question marks are still similar because of the offensive line and et cetera.
And the secondary.
Exactly, and the secondary because it's very young.
Yeah.
More than anything, the secondary is just young.
And, oh, by the way, I can't act like everything is positive. Cordell Flott was getting burnt left and right today.
He likely can be replaced.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, who's the vet?
Nick McLeod's the other guy that played really well for them.
Is Pinnock the oldest?
Yes, in the secondary as a safety.
He's, 27?
Exactly. It is such a young secondary.
It is a very young secondary. Hopefully, by scheme, defensive scheme that Bowen will set up, Shane Bowen, the new defensive coordinator, it won't be as exposed on that side of the ball. But my biggest point is you have some players who have attitudes, and it's a confidence that you just can't manufacture. You can't fake it, right? And when you have that, you have it, and it shows up in I think opportune moments in a season. So if I'm excited about anything, I haven't seen them practice yet. I've been over there. I actually saw it from the offices, but I didn't go down on the field and see them practice. I'm going to go over there tomorrow, like you guys did today.
You got to see neighbors.
And watch the Dan Campbell, inter squad practice going on. But I feel like there's just dudes that have attitudes on that team right now,
which is a positive. And now it is time for us to discuss the most controversial topic constantly about the New York Giants, and that's the quarterback, Daniel Jones. We mentioned that he was in that skirmish today. You never want to see a quarterback in the middle of it. But before we get to what he said after the practice about, his near future, I have to imagine a moment like that, Tiki, where he's involved in show. That's got to show the other guys on the team he's one of us, right? Like, I mean, no matter what you think of him, the play, like, he's still, we or fans that call here may not respect Daniel Jones.
Yeah, but
that locker room does.
But exactly, because he works his butt off. Right. I think some circumstances have gone against him health-wise in the entirety of his career that he's been here. But there's one thing that he can control, which will determine how people see him, and that's how hard he works. And the fact that he is always there, whether it's he's working hard on rehab or he's working hard on the field with those guys, you see that. Or in the weight room, you see that. And when you hear these guys talk about him, that's exactly what they say. There's not hesitation about his work ethic. Maybe the hesitation is about him consistently being available.
Yeah.
But the work ethic and the dedication is there. And today, listening to him after that skirmish, he had like a swag about him. Like there was
he was feeling himself.
Right, you could tell he was feeling it. He was comfortable. He was smiling. He was joking. Like he felt like a leader.
Yeah, and he looked like Brock Purdy in the second half of the NFC Championship game versus that defense.
I got to tell you, I like the beard on him.
Oh, the beard's got him a different kind of swagger. Now, he did say post-practice he would like to play in the preseason starting Thursday, playing all the preseason games. Loogie and I were at Brian Dable's pre-practice presser where Dable was asked about it, and Dable didn't commit one way or another, but he certainly hinted that we may not see Daniel at all in the preseason. He said we're going to take everything practice by practice. That was the way I interpreted it.
Right.
When you hear Daniel Jones say he wants to be out there, but you're also doing joint practices versus the Lions, you're going to have another joint practice coming up versus the Jets. Do you think it's imperative off an ACL for Daniel Jones to get out there with whatever the formulation of the offensive line is with Malik Neighbors? I know it's a different NFL now, Tiki.
Yeah,
should Daniel Jones play in the preseason?
I mean, I don't think any star should play in the preseason.
Okay.
I know that people are screaming, "Oh, you got to get a little bit of contact. You got to get hit." But I think the game is different. It's just changed, and the legislation of contact has changed. And the last thing you want to happen in a preseason practice or in a preseason game is somebody trying to make the team off of you. Right?
Yeah.
Right? Making whatever it is, a big hit, a big moment, a look at me moment. And it puts you on tape, so to speak. But if you're a veteran and a star or the starting quarterback, it's the last thing you need to be made an example of because somebody inexperienced and young does something stupid in a preseason game. So to me, it's not imperative.
I think he should play. I think he should play, and if no other reason, he should play with whatever they envision the five starters of the offensive line being. Now, I know John Michael Schmitz is down, but I think it is so important to get that cohesion, whether it's a series, 2 series. I think every single rep for this team is going to matter, especially when you consider the fact that they start with the Vikings and Washington, and they cannot afford to start in an 0-2 hole when those are the two opponents on you. I want to see this team is ready to go if they're going to give us a season.
I hear, but I fear something stupid happens.
I know.
I do. It's the same thing with the Jets. It's the same same thing why Aaron Rodgers likely is not going to play at all in the preseason, because you just fear something stupid
Could wreck
happening.
everything. I understand that, but you know what? That's what you got Tommy DeVito for, right? He looked good too today. 888-808-1019.